G'day and welcome to another episode of Ian Smissen's Photography. We're down here at Second Beach on the Olympic Peninsula near La Push. Incredible place. I'll just give you a pan around. So once again, spoiled for choice in a location like this. It's a matter of trying to find something to isolate it from the background rather than just the clutter of everything else around. There are thousands of shots that you could take. I've started off shooting the background with these huge stacks and trying to get these gulls into the foreground for a bit of interest. Of course, they keep moving around every time another photographer walks past, and there's plenty of those out on the beach this morning. But the other thing too is that because it's low tide, there's a lot of sand flats with water still on it, so you get nice reflections of the stacks. Because of the grey overcast sky though, there's not a lot of colour in the sky at the moment. So I'll try and take a variety of shots that might be useful in black and white, or some with just the subtle colours of the greys and the blues that are just starting to pop out over the horizon there. So I'll take a few shots, and when I get set up, I'll talk you through them. So as you can see here, the gulls have come right up into this little pond in front of me. I'm only about 10 metres away from it. So obviously they're quite used to people. There's another photographer just walked right behind me. It's the movement that gets them. It's not the proximity. If you stand still, they're okay. Anyway, I took a couple of shots here, and what I'd done is push the ISO up to 800 so that I could get a reasonable shutter speed. It's still quite dull here, so I've got an aperture of f8 and a shutter speed of 1/250th of a second. F8 is just enough for me to get the right depth of field from about sort of 10 metres through to infinity to get the birds and that foreground rock and pool in focus, as well as the background, but also get a shutter speed fast enough to freeze the birds when they're washing. So I'm going to take a few more shots here and then move on. Okay, here's a shot that is a bit unusual in terms of composition. I'll just turn the video on here and capture what I'm taking. I've chosen here to frame it with the subject right smack in the middle. I think I can get away with that because it's balanced by having a difference between the left side and the right side, with those trees on the left-hand side and the open space of the sand flat on the right-hand side. On this triangle of reflection from the foreground on the left and the foreground on the right, pointing into the triangular or pyramid-shaped rock in the middle. I'm going to bracket this shot because there's quite a significant difference in exposure value between the black rock and the light sky and the reflected water. And then I'm going to choose which one of those shots is going to give me the best exposure, or I can blend them together to balance out the little bit of texture in the sky that I'll lose when the sky's blown out. But I also want to get texture in the rock because there's some nice differentiation between the black rock itself and the grasses and the plants and the barnacles and the mussels on the rock itself, which in silhouette you can't see. The silhouette might look good, but I don't want to waste the shot by missing out on the opportunity of getting that detail. Sometimes when you're in the field, it's worth making sure that you capture enough evidence of what's there to make the decisions back in the office when you get the chance. So I'm going to take a few shots here and then move on and try and find another composition. So while this sequence is running off, I'll just talk you through what I'm doing here. I'm standing here with my wife and just saying we could stand on this spot and take 20 different shots. So what I'm starting with is a wide stitched panorama. I'm going from straight out to sea, basically straight inland, 180 degrees. I'm not going to use all of that, but you never know how much of it you're going to use, so it's always better to capture more on the left and the right than you think you need. This sequence is capturing a whole series of different stacks, and because I'm shooting a panorama with the sea, you can never get the waves right, so I've put a 6-stop neutral density filter on to slow the shutter speed down, which will blur those, which will make it much easier to stitch those together in the end. So hold on, I'll just take the next set here. And then I'm going to concentrate on looking at some of the close-ups here, trying not to move my feet for a while because I've got the perspective just right in terms of balance between the different major stacks here, and then go and wander around and have another look. All right, this next shot is making use of the rule of threes, or at least a rule of odd numbers. One thing to try and look for when you're shooting and you've got isolated subjects is not to do them in even numbers, particularly 2s and 4s. Once you get more than that, it doesn't really matter too much, but 3s work really nicely. So I've got this nice balance in this shot between the big stack with the trees on it on the right, the medium-sized stack in the middle, and that little sort of rectangular shaped stack on the left-hand side with some smaller ones as well. But that makes a nice little angle down from the top right down to the left, but it also has this nice cluster of 3s, and they're not evenly spaced, which again just adds a little visual tension to the scene and makes it more interesting. So I'm going to take a couple of shots here. I'm going to move around just a bit closer to and a bit further away from the waves, and I'm going to take the neutral density filter on and off to try and work out whether I want to smooth out those waves with a slower shutter speed or I want to freeze the waves with a faster shutter speed. So I'll take a few shots and show you the best ones. So the next shot I'm going to try and take is this one from the little sand pool here in the foreground with this rock in it and the nice reflection of the rock. And then the rocks with the mussels and barnacles on it in the midground, and going out to those stacks and the distant cliffs with the trees on them in the background. One of the other things to exploit here is the mist itself. The sea mist rolling in means that the further away you go, the more things are in the distance, the less clear they are to the eye. So you get that real sense of depth with that lack of clarity the further away you go. So I'm going to take a few shots here and see what I come up with. Just got to wait for a photographer to clear the scene. Slow shutter speed would fix it, but I don't want to use a slow shutter speed immediately here because I want to trap the action in those waves, and then I'll put the neutral density filter on and flatten the sea out and see which one I like. But at the moment I'm thinking about keeping the action in the waves. So we'll see what we get.